Line. Wonderful. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is our Service Delivery Committee meeting for the 20th of August. Great to see you all here today. And I'd like to invite Hinerangi Kara, if you could open with a karakia for us, please.
Hata Maria kia tātou. Nau mai whakatau mai koutou ki Wainganui I tō tātou nei whare. Ka pai ka inoi tātou, tu taua mai I runga, tu taua mai I raro, tu taua mai I roto, tu taua mai I waho, kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, mō te kingitanga, mō te ao katoa, haumi e hui e, tāe ki e.
Thank you. All right, so are there any apologies? And I do have some, Claire. We've got Councillor Morgan, who's on council business, and Councillor Gower, who is away for personal reasons, be received. So could I have a mover and second there? Okay, I've got Liz and Roger. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of members' interests? Yes, Hinerangi.
Sorry, Claire, I just got a pānui from Dale to read, if that's okay. It's part of the apologies.
Oh, yes. That's perfectly right. If you could do that. Yes,
yep,
please.
okay, excellent. So she just wanted to note it for the live stream and for public record that Councillor Morgan has asked me to mention today while she's away representing Waipa District Council at the Maruata National Forum today. Her error of not formally lodging her apology at the last service delivery meeting. She had assumed that in her absence somebody would mention that she was representing council at the JMA meeting in Te Kuiti that particular day. So she wanted me to note that for the record. Kia ora tātou.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so I'll just refer then to the disclosure of members' interests just to check that there aren't any. Cool. Excellent, thank you. And are there any late items? No, good. So could we have the confirmation of the order of the meeting, please? A mover and a seconder. So I've got Bruce Thomas and Lou Brown. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. And then confirmation of the minutes of our open meeting held on the 18th of June. So those have been pre-circulated. Lou's happy to move, and the seconder. Oh, Philip, thank you. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. And now for the substantive items on our agenda today. And the first one is a process review for the Cambridge Connection. So I'd like to invite staff to come forward. And while they are doing that, I'd just like to welcome those members of the public who are in attendance today for this item, as well as those online. The reports we are considering today are hugely significant to Cambridge, and I think we're all united in wanting to have the right outcomes and set us on a positive path for the future. I acknowledge the high quality feedback we've received from the community, which has been greatly appreciated. Now, I need to set out the expectations for the conduct of this meeting, as we do have formal requirements. No one from the public has speaking rights today, which means no calling out or interjecting during the course of the meeting. So if anyone does become vocal, I will be asking them to leave. Please be assured, though, that doesn't mean you're not welcome here, or that we won't be doing our best to provide the community with further input as the project proceeds. So with that, I'd like to hand over, Brian, I guess you're leading us off on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just for the online viewers, I'm Brian Hudson, the Transportation Manager, and to my right here, Rachel Elgar, our Transport Planner, and to our left, Nathan Harper from Envise Consultants, who's been helping us with this business case. So thank you, Madam Chair. The paper in front of us is the process review for Cambridge Connections, and as a result of the, I guess, the upset that was caused through releasing options for improvements, transport improvements at the beginning of the year, Council and particularly the Mayor asked for a formal and independent review to see where we dropped the ball and where we could have done better. And to identify improvements and measures that would help us in completing a successful business case and to really give us some lessons learned for future large projects of this type. So I wanted to just quickly, because I'm aware that there is quite a report here and there's quite a good summary, just to run through some of the key findings quickly. But I think, Madam Chair, did the Mayor is wanting to say something first, given that you did require the review.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Brian, and good morning, and Nathan and Rachel and members of the public. Listen, this, as we all know, has been a very, very hot topic in Waipa and in particular in Cambridge for decades now, and has certainly become increasingly hot in recent times, prompting obviously the independent or request for an independent review of the process that we'd undertaken to get to where we were. That review had sort of 3 R's, if you like, and at first we wanted to recognise that we haven't done as well as we had hoped, which I think we've been pretty clear in. The second was to reflect on how we could do better through that review process, and the third thing was to reset. I'm really delighted to see the review today. I think the findings within it are really, really helpful, and I would like to think that they will stand us in good stead going forward, not only in terms of this project, but others of similar nature. I guess having read the review and the 2 reports that relate to Cambridge Connections today on our agenda, I was a little concerned that I didn't see the reset enough in our documents, and spoke with my colleagues about whether they felt that it was embodied enough in there as well. And there was a general feeling that perhaps the reset wasn't as explicit as we had hoped, and that there was an appetite for us to actually be more collaborative in our approach in terms of trying to find a way forward that incorporated the community's views, brought in that expertise, and at the same time carried everybody with us. So I think that there's an appetite for us to have a more fulsome workshop on this matter, and I think the suggestion has been put that these 2 reports, as great as they are, lie on the table, and that we actually address this in a more collaborative manner at some time into the future. I think it's really important that we engage really thoroughly in that feedback space with our communities, and we've made no bones of the fact that there's some awesome, rich, informed ideas and thinking in there, and I think we need to do those ideas justice. I also think that we need to have a discussion around how this body of work is best governed into the future, and I definitely think, without preempting it, that the community board in Cambridge has a significant role to play in that. So, but those are all things that I think as a elected membership we can perhaps flesh out with the assistance of staff going forward in a workshop. I'm happy to suggest that that's potentially the way forward, and I know that there is some potential support for that around the table. But look, I'm heartened that the reports are here, but I just think we need to make sure we make explicit moves to enact the recommendations within that review. But thank you very much for your reports, Brian, and the opportunity, Madam Chair, for sort of setting out the way I sort of see the lay of the land. And thank you to staff for being willing to have that independent review conducted. It's an important piece of the puzzle in this journey towards Cambridge Future Connections.
Thank you, Mayor Susan. I really appreciate you sort of setting the scene for us on that, because I think, you know, the independent review has been really valuable. It was the right thing to do, I think. And as Brian's mentioned, it's been an important part of the process to validate what the steps were done and to highlight, you know, where things could have been done better. And I think that in a way, I would like to see a fuller discussion right now on that independent review. And then we'll be moving on to the second item on in our business year, where we will be looking at, so what are we going to do? So with that, Brian, I'm wondering if you could highlight, the key findings of the independent review, And then we'll have an opportunity for any of the members, to put forward their views or, raise any issues that they've still got. Yeah, thank you.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. So just on that first page there, as everybody's mentioned, it's, a high profile project, a high level of community interest. And so the project was identified as a program business case. And I realise we use that jargon, program business case, and the public probably don't understand what we mean by that. So I just want to give a bit of a definition to that. So a program business case is designed to find the combination of activities that represent the best value for money response to the case for change or the problems identified. So in this situation, it's a growing town. Transportation issues are going to get steadily worse in terms of congestion because we've got a very car-dominated transport system in Cambridge. So the program business case would find a suite of measures, a combination of activities that will provide the best solutions and the best value for money there. And so the investment objectives that were set out at the beginning of this process, in identifying those problems, those two problem statements, which were a car-dominated transport system, meaning that, yes, the town would become more congested, but also for people who didn't have a car, they would be further disadvantaged. So we wanted to improve accessibility for all modes of transport, including public transport. We wanted to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which under the previous government was a target. Under the new government, you would probably say it's about economic benefit and economic activity. And certainly, if you look at the Auckland motorway where everybody sits burning gas going nowhere, it's both an emission problem, but it's an economic problem. And so we don't want that economic problem for Cambridge of widespread congestion. Wanted to improve the amenity in the town centre. Wanted to improve the safety for active modes and improve system resilience. So that was another one of the key problems that with two bridges, one that can't take heavy traffic, one that has to take all the heavy traffic, one that's very old and so is becoming increasingly unreliable, but also other roads like Victoria Road and Cambridge Road, which are taking the lion's share of the traffic and would become busier and more congested in the future. So some key links in the network which are vulnerable and would become overloaded. So those were the problems or the objectives that the study set out to resolve. So a bridge was just one part of that, maybe 20 or 25% of the necessary problem solving. The other 75% was finding solutions to all of those other issues. And so on that note, I'll just move forward then. So
could I just ask you, Brian, you were giving a definition of that program business case, and I just want to get some clarity on that, because that's kind of like sort of the top tier in quite an extended process, that from that further detailed business cases or specific business cases will fall. Yeah, and so, sort of doing an overarching kind of,
okay.
And so, and that was where we were at when we kicked off this process last year, or I suppose 2022. Yeah.
That's right. So the program business case would provide the overarching range of activities, which would be a range of things like walking and cycling, public transport, improving those key corridors, which would have more traffic, looking at the vulnerability of the bridges and where we would need future capacity in the future, and looking at, what does increasing traffic do to high amenity places like our main street. So we would look at all of those issues, and we wouldn't necessarily come down to detailed solutions to each of those problems, but we would say that this range of activities, if we invest in each of these, we will get best bang for buck and the best outcome for the community. And then from that point in time, we would go to those more discrete projects or corridors or activities and say, right, now what's the detail for public transport, the detail for walking and cycling, the detail for bridges? They would become separate projects once we'd made our high-level decision that those were the priorities.
Thanks, that's been really helpful. Thank you.
Cool. So a project steering group was set up to manage the study and to guide it and to with a range of key stakeholders to make sure we were hearing from a range of voices and interests across the community. There was some early engagement and consultation, which identified something like 130 odd issues that came in from the public and different stakeholders saying these are all the problems that we see and issues we'd like the study to address. And that was compiled into a strategic case in terms of what's the evidence for change, what are all the future thinking, forward-looking, where is the growth going to happen, where is the extra traffic going to come from, how will people travel in the future, all of those things put into models and the like to then help provide that evidence base to guide decision making.
So just on that, Brian, I'm just trying to I'm bearing in mind the feedback we've had from the community. And so one of the criticisms we've heard from them is that the community probably didn't have a prominent role in that stakeholder group. Now, I was just wondering if you might be able to, explain the representation in that group. Perhaps there was an assumption that the community views would be coming through from those members, or that I'm not wanting to put words in your mouth, but was it intended that was another step later on where that more focused engagement with the community would happen? Like, could you just sort of help us to resolve some of those issues around the representation on that stakeholder group and where you saw that community voice coming through? Right.
Well, I guess you, in a project like this, typically you have a tighter stakeholder group who would have a direct interest in the investment and in the outcomes. And so in this situation, we have people like Waka Kotahi, NZTA planning staff would be there because we would rely on them in the future to put it forward to their board for funding. We had regional council staff who are involved in delivery of public transport. We involved, I think, the freight industry to a degree with representatives because, big trucks will have to use the network to deliver. The community board was represented.
The councillors.
And staff and iwi. So that's sort of a key stakeholder group, but then it's a matter of needing to engage with a wider community at different phases through the project. And I guess this is where the review says, well, we didn't do that particularly well. So that key stakeholder group, I think when you read the strategic case, which is kind of like a summary of all of the initial work and the evidence, it actually, it reads pretty well in terms of identifying the problems. And interestingly, when we looked at the public feedback that we got, a lot reflected on those problems that were identified right at the beginning. So I think we were on the right track there. But in terms of putting the information into a good format and being able to spread it widely in the community, and this is where this process review has got some very good recommendations around, well, how could we have done that better? Got the community more involved and given the community more context, more of the background story, so that when we did have consultation events or drop-in or there was more of that story on display, more of the thinking around future-proofing the transport system and making it robust and resilient. More of that would have been on display for people to to form their opinions of the view. And of course, we know that the timing was rushed and then we didn't have all of the information that we wanted and to be able to present it in a way, again, to get that story across to the community. And
I suppose that might have contributed to the focus turning to a bridge rather than the broader story that is going to be needed to address those incredibly complex transportation pressures.
That's quite correct. The bridge sort of becomes the lightning rod that attracts all the attention.
Yeah.
And yes, it's a necessary conversation, but it is a bigger conversation that we need to work with the community on.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
So I guess those were certainly the main findings of the review, and there's some very good recommendations there on, it's page 4 of the review. And the first one there around reviewing decision-making and approval of processes. And so this highlights the fact that when we got to the point of, I guess, bringing forward the consultation with the community, trying to do it in alignment with a long-term plan, and we weren't ready, and then we rushed it. So our decision-making at that point was not, I guess, clearly focused on the big picture, and it didn't recognise that we hadn't brought the community on the journey well enough to have that conversation yet.
Yeah.
So
And so I guess with that, there's 2 points. One of them was like the compressed timeframes. And in fact, everyone around this table, understands what happened when we were planning the LTP at the end of last year, and then it got changed to an enhanced annual plan and things like that, and the resourcing issues that were part of that. Yeah. So I'm not trying to make an excuse. I'm just trying to I give a bit more detail about the circumstances.
yes.
Yeah, that we found ourselves in that
Yeah.
point. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, certainly the benefit of hindsight there. So the next review recommendation, certainly the challenge and risk review process. While there was a risk review process through the development of the project, it probably needed to be elevated to a higher level in terms of understanding the sentiment of the community, the importance of the decisions and the options and bridge options, and not recognising the level of risk that it was involved with that, and the compressed sort of time frame and lack of, community engagement is where we needed to be, but pre-engagement that told the story, that developed the context, that prepared the community to understand all of the issues wasn't there, and we didn't recognise that risk. So risk
Thank you for being
management.
so honest about that, Brian. Yeah, I think the community has appreciated that. Yeah. Thank you.
Then the business case recommendations is the next part there on page 4. So the first one there recognises that the new government will have some change priorities, and we will need to amend that, but also through the community consultation process, we'll need to be aware, fully aware of those community strategic priorities. Just in terms of the level of detail in the program options, obviously with the feedback process that we've just been through, we've gathered a whole lot more information and views from the community. So we'll be able to put that into the long list and help us to redefine that short list of options. And the other one there, just reviewing the communications process. And there is a whole section on page 5 of our report, which really does home in on that communications process, because this is where we've probably got the most to learn and the most work to do in terms of making sure that the community are with us on this journey for the next steps. Because this is an important process. We can't let past mistakes derail us from coming up with really good solutions for Cambridge. So we do need to put our best foot forward now with an enhanced communications and engagement process and plan. And certainly WSP have given us some good advice and some good measures here, which I know our communications team have taken on board, and that the the wider team are committed to implementing. So it's probably a good place. I've done too much talking. I apologise.
Oh, look,
Let
thank you,
other
Brian.
people-
I think it was really good that you did actually go through the specific recommendations, because I think it's prepared us well now to open up, input from our members here. So is there anything anyone, wants to? Philip, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks everyone for your reports and things like that. You know, with the greatest respect, with all the work that's gone on with the team and things like that, you just mentioned that there was the most amount of work to do with communication and things like that, and engagement. And the review says that the engagement should have been better with the public. With other projects before, where we've brought the community in and to help form a plan forward and things like that, it's been really successful, and it is commented that it can be really costly doing that. You know, we've got to, you know, in order to get this right, or if we get it wrong, it can also be really costly for the future. Is there a way that or in this particular situation, can we do something very similar that we've done with other projects before, really engaging the community and things like that? And you talked about learning from the review and things like that. So is there ways that, or would you be prepared to look at doing that and really bringing the community in to help get feedback and things like that and ideas? You know, you talked about stakeholders and stakeholder groups and things like that, but you know, there's been some awesome feedback which everyone will acknowledge from the public, and some really useful information and feedback. So is there a way that we can really involve, you know, restock and really look at and doing that? And as you said, you know, that's where the reviews come short. So.
Yeah, I feel like one of our communications team should be up here, but look, we've got some enormous experience in our communications team, and they are already working very hard, looking at the timeline ahead and looking at the right steps. You know, taking some advice from the WSP report as well, to look at what are those mechanisms to really engage with the community. So I've got no doubt that they will develop a very good plan, which we will work together as a team to make sure is implemented. That communications plan and the different steps and activities would be brought back to council here to talk it through before it gets started. So I've got confidence that we will achieve.
Yeah, I mean, great question, Philip. In fact, most of us have probably got that in the back of our minds. So I'd just like to invite Lisa, our communications manager, if she'd like to speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Probably just a couple of points that I would like to raise that has come out of the report, is that one, it's correctly identified that there was a lack of continuity with comms and engagement staff working on the project. You know, that it had started in 2022 with the development of a framework. There had been under-resourcing of the team for an almost 18-month period post that. So by the time we got to go to the community with some more information, there had been a void of almost a year in terms of what had been happening with the project. And from a comms and engagement perspective and a change management perspective, that's less than ideal. Because the two overlay, and it's very important that when we are working on major projects that we do take the community on a change management journey, because we're affecting people's lives, essentially. I was new in the role when pretty new to the role when we went out with Cambridge Connections, and certainly have taken on board the depth of feeling that is out there in the community. our senior staff have now undertaken IAPT2 training, which is an internationally recognised public participation spectrum. So that is now complete. We will be looking at this project and taking in a complete reset from a communications and engagement perspective. And yes, Philip, we will be introducing ways that the community can have more buy-in to the project. One of the recommendations out of the report is core focus groups with members of the community, and that is just one of a myriad of options that we'll be looking towards to take the community on the journey with us. It's a 30-year project, which is a long time, so it's really important that from here we stop, reset, reflect on what we need to do, and take the community with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate you giving us that detail. Now, Liz.
Yeah, Lisa, look, that was fantastic. Yeah, really appreciated those words actually, because I know how difficult this whole issue has been. And look, a big thank you to the team. You know, no one comes to work wanting to do a bad job. We've heard that before. You know, everyone here wants to do the right thing for their communities, and sometimes we just simply haven't quite struck it right. Look, I've had a huge, an extraordinary number of people reach out to me over this issue, and I've met with them all personally, actually, at their homes, drank lots of tea in the process, but it was probably a really good way to fully understand the intangibles, really get a true sense of the true feelings of the community. And the biggest issue by far was the way that the Blue Blob was communicated and announced to the community. As one person around this table, it shouldn't have happened in the way that it did, and for that, I'm truly sorry. I can't fix what has happened in the past, but I can, as part of a team, make sure that going forward, things change. So it's probably fair to say that we've created a bit of a fear in the community who live in the Blue Blob area. They're anxious about the value of their homes, how their families will be affected in the future. But I am hoping in the next item we can do a better job in addressing all of the very legitimate concerns and ensuring the community going forward does have their say. So best foot forward now. Thank you for the report. I think it was really a good report. It has identified some of the issues, but this is all about moving forward now, but acknowledging the past and making sure that we do the right thing.
Thank you, Liz. Roger?
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, as I sat, of course, alongside Liz on that PSG group and with Claire, and I agree that it has to be a positive way forward. I have to say that with Rachel and Nathan and Brian, I enjoyed and supported the Cambridge connections. I know that towards the end there, I perhaps expressed some contrary opinion. But to my mind, this session that we're in now does revolve around the WSP report. And this is the fact that it's on this table here is a public lodgement of that document. And the only other record of the council's opinion on that report is in the news releases that have gone out that suggests that largely correct according to the independent review. I've distributed a paper amongst all councillors expressing my view that I think that WSP report was considerably deficient in reflecting the process or aspects of the process that have not been addressed. I don't think I'd have time to read the whole report because it's 5 or 6 pages. But if I may, I would like to identify those aspects which I've identified as being deficient in that report. First of all, were the terms of reference. The terms of reference of the report. I would have thought that if that was going to be a report that was called to by council, those terms of reference would either have been reviewed by council or reviewed by the PSG, or have at least some input, and there wasn't. The scope of the review didn't include any consultation with the PSG or the Cambridge Connections Working Group. Now, if you're going to review the process, why wouldn't you involve those people that were part and parcel of the process? There was lack of communication between the programme working group and council. Now, as a councillor on that PSG, for the whole of the first year of that group, I was instructed not to share detail with my fellow councillors, and that all of the discussion should have been kept in committee in that group. Now, I think that that was a breakdown, especially for the year. I actually did not comply with that because I did, within the last couple of months, take it to my fellow councillors to discuss that. The decision of the group was basically all data-based. There was a list of 24 criteria. Those criteria were all given a score of between -3 and +3. But the community consultation did not come part of that consideration. I think one of the errors was that, and the result that was given out to the community, one of the actions was that the result appeared to be fait accompli. That the fact that a preferred option was presented means, and certainly the public perception was, the decision's already been taken. So therefore, there's no response from us. There was a question of data integrity. Now, I do know that there were some contrary comments about other feed of data being used, but irrespective, there was a question over the data that was used to create the net result. Now, that's not been addressed as to how and why that happened. There was actually a change in the program outputs, and that was the decision to go to a blue band release rather than a specific location. To my mind, there was no doubt in the original outcomes that the requirement of this group was to identify a specific location. The change to becoming blue band was actually an arbitrary decision made by officers of council without any reference to the PSG or council. And that, I think, was a fault of that group. There was actually conflict within the PSG. There was probably one of the loudest and heaviest disagreements of opinion that was not resolved within that PSG over a number of the aspects related to the blue banding. And in the event, there was no communication with the affected landowners. Now, to my mind, none of those, if you like, challenges with the process are identified in that report. I'm just saying that if we're going to have a report out there that assesses that particular program, I think we should have more recognition of the negative aspects of that program as well as the positives. And I go back to my initial comment. I was very supportive of and worked hard with both Rachel and Nathan, sitting down on a number of occasions to address certain aspects of the way that the report, the way that the process went through. So as I say, I think we've got to acknowledge that there were some negatives in the process which doesn't come through in this report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate you stating your opinions there. And I'll put my hand up and say I was the person that had the disagreement with you on this, how specific a location was when the terms of reference or the project, a guiding document said simply location, whether or not that was a high-level location or a specific one. And I'm sure there was guidance given by staff, but this isn't the forum, I think, for you and I to go into depth on that, but I'd be happy to do that because I do think it's important for it to be put to bed and guide our, the way that we go into the future.
Madam Chair, I wanted the opportunity to express my opinion. I've done that. I've registered the document. I think it's important that we now move forward. I don't want to go back and dig anything like that. I think it's important. But I did want to register that it wasn't all as rosy as that press release and as that report actually suggests.
Yeah, fair enough. And some of us do thrive on robust debate. Just on I suppose, the general comments that Councillor Gordon's raised about the scope of the report. My understanding was that it was pretty clear the intention behind it about learning from what happened, reflecting and resetting and understanding the process. And I think there was an intention for it to be independent, so not get involved in personal conversations and that. Is there anything you'd like to comment on that, Brian?
No, Madam Chair, I think it's the terms of reference pretty much stand as is.
I think the Mayor would like to say something. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you through you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your honesty, Roger, in terms of how the process has been for you. In terms of the review, the terms of reference were set by me because I convened and called for the review. It wasn't a review undertaken by or called for by the council. It was a mayoral decision to call an independent review. The terms of that review was to purely be a desktop process to ascertain its consistency with the principles of the NZTA business case processes. I had no personal involvement with the PSG, so I can't speak to any of the activity in terms of some of the issues you've raised. My concern sat around the lack of alignment between the process that we undertook and the principles of the NZTA business case process, and that's what that has limited the scope to. And as a desktop independent exercise, I believe it's done that pretty well. And I'm not saying that there may have been other issues which you've clearly canvassed today, but that wasn't the intent of the independent review. It was to ascertain the consistency with those principles and see how we could do better. Sure thing.
I've got the memo that came out with regard to the review of the process development of Cambridge Connections business case. And I noticed that this memo was actually sent to yourself, Gary Dyatt, but also, with respect, my colleague, Councillor Mike Montgomery. I'm sorry, I can't understand why Mike Montgomery was included in that when neither any other members of council or the PSG were included.
I'm happy to speak to that. Councillor Montgomery came to me with concerns about the fact that he felt there wasn't an alignment between the process that we undertook and the business case requirements for NZTA. He'd done a whole lot of work himself off his own bat to see where the alignment was, and he expressed concern with me that it wasn't there. So on that basis, I asked him to attend a meeting with me to discuss this with Gary and Gary Dyatt, our former CE, and Dawn, and from that discussion, this process was born. We also had the assistance of comms and other people, as I recall, off the back of my head. But this came from a concern that Councillor Montgomery quite rightly raised with me, and I'm grateful for him doing that.
Other councillors had similar concerns.
Councillor Montgomery may wish to speak to that, but that is the origin of the review.
Look, I'm happy to provide Councillor Montgomery with an opportunity to comment, but I'd like to sort of wrap that side of the conversation up because I'm keen for us to reach some sort of resolution for the business item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to give my perspective on how that happened. It was in preparation after the failed community drop-in session. There was a Cambridge Community Board meeting, I think a week or two later. And in the meantime, I'd done quite a bit of work looking at the Wakakatahi material available online about business case preparation and best practice guidelines and so on, and come to the view that that our process had been quite seriously deficient in lots of respects. And I got to the point of, I decided I wasn't just prepared to sit in a Cambridge Community Board public forum and say nothing, which I could have done. I wanted to engage with the community. Not wanting to surprise the staff, I believe I emailed the Mayor and Gary Diet and said, this is what I'm thinking. I'm seeing serious problems here. I want to engage. I want you to know about it. And Gary and the Mayor called together a team. I was there, expressed my concerns, and at that point, Mayor Susan initiated this review, okay? Slightly surprisingly to me, Gary Diet emailed me on 24th of April with the draft terms of reference and just said, what do you think? I critiqued it, sent it back. Didn't actually think anything of it. Didn't think it was a process failing or anything. And that was sort of the end of that for me. So as context, that's how it happened. And I probably got, after that, it was kind of out of my hands. But I just wanted to just so everyone knew around the table what my involvement, how I ended up on that email. That's how, okay?
Look, I think it's important for us to air all of these issues, I think, so we understand what happened. Now, I think we've had a good discussion. Yeah, and I'm just checking that no one else wants to speak that, would like to. So with that, we have a recommendation on the table to, this time it's just receiving the report. Yeah, so you're happy to move? Yeah, and Andrew's happy to second.
That's what I vote against it, because it's an acknowledgement of that report.
And we're happy to record your vote against, Roger. So all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Roger, carried. Thank you. And now we have the next item, which Brian and Rachel is going to stay in the seat. And so this is the recommendations and next steps for Cambridge Connections business case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is, again, quite an involved paper. It brings together the feedback, the community feedback. So we've got 509 responses, and all of those submissions are included in the appendices of this paper. And Rachel did an amazing job, along with Karen and others in the team, and with advice from Nathan and Chris, in terms of trying to bring together the main themes and concerns of the community, which we've done into a table in Appendix 3, as trying to, I guess, because certainly it's a mammoth mental task to try and read through all of the submissions and get all of the individual points of view and ideas and coalesce it into something that you could say, well, here is a theme of community feeling and view and ideas. So I certainly take my hat off to the team who have done that, because it was a mammoth task, weeks of work, reading each of those and summarising. So the way we had thought to pop up on the screen there. Yeah, we'll just do that. Yeah. So at the beginning of the business case, the project steering group developed the two problem statements that sort of put in a nutshell the things that we're trying to achieve. So there's a bit of a timeline just on the screen there in terms of the starting point back in 2022. Starting the business case, engagement with stakeholders, drop-in sessions, getting that long list of issues, coming up with a strategic case, which is all of the background evidence, the population now, the population expected in the future, traffic now, traffic expected in 2055, the sort of time horizon for solutions, and traffic modelling, all of those steps to come up with that, as I described, that program of activities that council would undertake to ensure the future transportation system works for Cambridge. And so the problem statements is on the next slide, Zoe. Oh, I think Rachel's got it. Oh, we'll just go back one. So identifying that the transport system is very car dependent presently, and that as the town grows, that's going to be exacerbated. If the only choice people have to get places, to the supermarket, to the school, to recreation, to health services, is to own and drive a car, then you can imagine what Cambridge would look like with twice the population and twice the volume of traffic, especially in those peak hours, because that's where the problems arise. So we needed to find solutions to that and better transport choices. And then that, as I mentioned earlier, the over-reliance on key connections to perform multiple functions. Our main shopping street in Cambridge is at the peak times, it's a commuter route for people just travelling through trying to get to and from work. Others like the upper end of Victoria Street between the Queen Street and Hamilton Road. It's a 2-lane road. It's got fast food outlets and service stations and angle parking, and yet it's trying to funnel through more than 20,000 vehicles a day through that one corridor, including buses and pedestrians and cyclists. So we've the other one obviously is 115-year-old bridge, which we're relying on to move 14 to 15,000 vehicles a day across there, and another couple of thousand pedestrians and cyclists. So it is vulnerable to closure, but it's a key connection that the current system really relies on. So we just keep in mind all the time as we're looking at the community feedback and as we developed ideas around trying to solve these two problems here. So just on page 3 then, there is a good summary of the key themes that came through. Strong community support for a bridge that was a new bridge out of town. Strong community response against a bridge in town. Quite a few responses saying, well, we think the Victoria Bridge is such an important and useful transport link. We want to, don't see it as being closed to traffic in the future, keep it open to traffic. Certainly a number of responses said, wouldn't it be great if we could go around the town, so having on and off ramps at T-Rail Road with the expressway so we could go north or come south that way. Certainly there was support for improving public transport, needing to make sure it was feasible and affordable, and also how do we get more children going to school on buses as opposed to being delivered in cars. Certainly a lot of support for cycling and walking routes. For those people who don't own cars in Cambridge, there is strong support for improving the safety and convenience of walking and cycling. Certainly Cambridge residents are noting congestion at peak hours, and they noted a range of intersections where they said work needs to be done here, the intersection needs to work better, whether that's building a roundabout or signals or something else. Certainly a lot of feeling around parking in Cambridge in the town centre, with people wanting a parking strategy to understand what the solution is for parking long term. Certainly there was some support for improving the streetscape in town, and that came through, not only in this feedback, but in past feedback around the town concept development, where people said, we want our town centre to be a more people-friendly place and less overwhelmed by traffic. There was certainly support around making some main roads wider to enable people to get around in cars, but then there was the counter argument to that where people said, well, we really value the way Cambridge looks and the trees and the landscape and the historic features, and we don't want to be totally dominated by cars on roads. As I mentioned, certainly that recognition of Cambridge with its historic nature and wanting to protect that. Certainly submissions there talking about Leamington Village, and if it could be provide more services and be easier to move around and everything and cross the street, then that would balance some traffic movements that wouldn't have to go into town. There were concerns around the use of Bluetooth data that was gathered during the red traffic light setting of COVID, and whether that would accurately reflect how people were travelling. We did, certainly through the public consultation process and in response to people, we did highlight the fact that Bluetooth data was not used for any of the option development. It was useful information, but the traffic modelling looking ahead at 2055 and the population and the trips that people would make at that time, that was the basis of the data used for developing options, not the Bluetooth. So while we tried to get that message across, I think people felt it was some sort of conspiracy and we were trying to cover up something, but that certainly wasn't the case. We were very open and telling people that Bluetooth was not used for any predictions. There were a number of good ideas around future bridge options and certainly a wide range of opinions. And it did highlight I guess that painting the picture, the context, and giving the community that background story. It came across quite strongly where people said, we always thought and knew the bridge would be out of town, but the story we had been trying to tell and where we had this misalignment was that the centre of population is going to be more in the existing town area, still, even with all the growth out to the west, and with the growth around Leamington and Cambridge North, the majority of people would still be wanting to cross the river in the town because that's their destination in the town, to the schools, the shops, the health centres, the recreation, the social activities. And so we needed to provide, while a bridge out of town could still be a longer term solution and would be useful longer term, we needed to guarantee the bridge and the river crossing capacity in town as the priority. We know the Victoria Street Bridge is vulnerable. We talked about that. So if there's a closure there, the Shakespeare Street Bridge becomes overwhelmed. And even if we built a new bridge out of town, because the majority of people would want to make their trips in town, they'd still be using the two existing bridges. So effectively, we'd have to double the capacity of the Shakespeare Street and Karapiro Street Bridge to cater for the demand for travel within the town. So you'll see from the summary in the Appendix 3 and the staff recommendations that there are a summary of those points.
Yes, and I'm not expecting you to go over them individually. I think our members have been able to familiarise themselves with that. And so I guess, yeah, if it's okay with you, Brian, we'll leave you there, and then I'd see, yeah, discussion from the room on, your thoughts on what's proposed. Yep, thank you, Councillor Montgomery.
So my view on what's proposed here is that it is not enough, a significant enough reset. And I reference the recommendations in the WISP report, which we've just canvassed, which I thought were 13 excellent recommendations. And in my assessment, this way forward is not a significant enough reset, and we need to take our time to do this right to better satisfy the recommendations in the report. So want to be very clear on that view. Yeah.
And I think, thank you. Liz and then Roger.
Yeah, look, I share that view as well, Monty, because look, this isn't an ordinary project. This is an extraordinary project. And yeah, and I guess the status and the voice that we've heard from the community through all that feedback, our community is demanding something better. So look, there's probably 4 points that I just wanted to make. One is, you know, I support the idea of slowing this down a little, going back to the table, around this table. And I think that's probably a good way forward. I'm probably not too excited about the fact that the river crossings in the report have been kind of moved to one side or off the table. So I think we need more discussion on that around this table as well. I probably wasn't happy with I guess the recommendation around spending money that wasn't approved in our annual plan, the $170,000. I think that required community consultation. So again, another reason to slow this down. And also, I think, you know, when we look at our council structure, we've got our main committees and our strategic planning and policy committee. I want our councillors to think about this going forward, because I'm not too sure that we've got this particular issue, this extraordinary project in the right committee at this point in time. So I want more discussion around that. When I think about SPMP, and it's not because two Cambridge councillors are the chair and the deputy chair, it's more around what it stands for, and the community consultation that normally sits and the high integrity and the degree to which we consult our annual plans, our Aki, you know, that is probably what our community expects of us. And I just wonder, and I'd like for this to head back, come back around to us for a really good, robust discussion about potentially looking at how we govern this issue going forward, and just acknowledge that and the group that we've had, the journey that we've had to date, the project control group that Nathan and the team at council have led was very good. I think that we probably need to circle back and consider a new group as well. I think that is something that, yeah, we should probably ensure that our engagement ongoing is very, very robust. So that's it from me.
Thank you, Liz and Roger.
Yeah. Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I appreciate that the bridge options, as they were defined, have been taken, if you like, off the table at that instance. But I still get the very strong impression, reading all the feedback, that in fact the community do actually want the bridge location to be identified. I think the level of feedback we got was incredible. There was some really, really positive thoughts and suggestions came into that. And of course, that feedback was really developed in, if you like, a negative environment, because it was, you know, it was as a result of performance at the time. So I think we should really use that as a base for a positive move forward, and recognize that detail and use it as a base for what I think the community want is a community-led process to identify what the future network should be. And so I'm also in favor of saying, let's not hurry. I don't think time is critical. It's the result that we have which is the critical factor. And I think if we go back to developing this as a community-led process to identify what they're wanting, then I think whether it be 12 months, 18 months, the benefit of Cambridge is that it will have an acceptable to them solution. So I'm in favour of deferring the movement that you're suggesting in this report and pushing it back to, as I say, a community-led exercise and process.
Thank you, Roger. Now I have Andrew and then Monty and then Phil.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Yeah, look, I totally agree with you, Roger, in terms of time. This is not an issue to be rushed, but with what Liz was saying, I mean, this is clearly a strategic and planning issue. When I sit here and think about it, it was probably in the wrong place from the word go. It should come under SPMP, Strategic Planning and Policy. And I think when we look at what has come under that committee, engagement has been really, really good.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to cast blame or anything here. It's just, it's a different lens that we bring when things come under strategic planning and policy. And I'd very much advocate that that's where this, I mean, clearly, of course, if transportation officers, service delivery team need to be extremely heavily involved. And, you know, listening to all this morning, the data gathered and the analysis of it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. What's, to me, the biggest thing that's gone wrong here is that when it was presented to the population of Cambridge in a public meeting, it was taken as a fait accompli. I think someone mentioned that earlier. And it absolutely is not. I mean, it hadn't been considered by full council at all. But that was the message that was being received, the perception that was received. And let's not make that mistake again. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Now, Monty and then Phil.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me have a second go, which I normally wouldn't ask for. But I had said I thought the reset wasn't significant enough. I just would like to give a few brief pointers where I think it needs to be improved. I think the governance of the project needs to be looked at. I think the role of the stakeholder group needs to be revised. I think the role of the wider public, their place needs to be really significantly revised to be elevated to an appropriate position. And I think we need to be much clearer about how this program business case will translate into the subsequent business cases, because I would really like everyone to have a reasonably clear line of sight how we get from this program business case to the sort of some point in the future where we are building another river crossing. So I think all those things, they all represent for me a very significant reset, and what I'm seeing in this current report, it didn't achieve enough. So thank you for the second go.
Thank you. And Phil?
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, just briefly, I mean, the community, like Roger was saying, the community feedback has been phenomenal, and there's a huge amount of knowledge there. And I think the one thing the community really want to ensure is that this will be kept on the table, and a route is identified at some stage at the appropriate time, yeah, and we just and this cannot be rushed. I mean, this will define the future of our town, and 100% support the proposal of potentially putting it in the SPMP committee, this particular topic and subject. So, yep, thank you.
Thank you, Philip. And now Hanarangi.
Kia ora tātou. So I'm I'm speaking right now as as not only the Te Kanohi rep and somebody who was born and bred in Cambridge, And I also bring with me, I'm the co-chair of Ngāti Koriki Kahukura, the principal iwi with dominant mana whenua interested in and around Cambridge. And so I just wanted to note for the record that we support the work that the Cambridge Connections are doing. We think that's a valuable piece of work that you're undertaking, and obviously, like I can tell straight away that it's not easy, and there's a big job ahead. We acknowledge that there is more work to do in terms of community engagement that's required, and I'm a little concerned that I read in the report somewhere that there is no extra funding, no additional funding, no additional budget for engagement is a little concerning to me. So I hope that's something that's addressed as part of the engagement review, which I noted from the report as well. I think this is me personally. I think you need to eat the frog. I'm not sure if you're aware of that saying. Eat the frog. Eat the frog basically means you need to go and do the thing that you least want to do first, right? Eat the frog, get it over and done with. And I think sort of sidestepping or skirting around the whole bridge thing is not eating the frog, right? So we need to eat the frog and go there and deal with it. So that's the first thing. Eat the frog. I agree that we need to sort of take our time a little bit more here. It's the whole measure twice, cut once, sort of theory. So I acknowledge that. I also acknowledge moving this particular kaupapa to the SNP committee. However, I just want to note, purely biased, I think, that the co-chair of the dominant mana whenua grouping in Cambridge sits around this table, and somebody who's born and bred in Cambridge, lived there all my life, is sitting around this table. So I don't want you to forget that. And again, I just noted from the recommendations from mana whenua that we want to see the manaakitanga, and we want to see the kaitiakitanga and the considerations for our environment, the considerations for looking after our people within our community, not just Māori, but our whole community. So that's really what I want to see in this next iteration of work, is that there's been lots of consideration for that. All right, kia ora tātou.
Thank you. Really appreciate those words. Thank you, Hinarangi. Now, look, Lou, do you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. I've sat here quite quietly for quite a while. We're on the other side. Okay, I come from Tiamu. I just felt that there was a breakdown of communication here all over the whole of the operation. However, I'd like to support my compatriot and say supporting the S&P taking this process, because they have a longer lens. And that's the thing. They are strategic policy. They are looking at it at a project with a much longer lens. Service delivery is a short lens. They're there to do what's intimate within a month, a year, 2 years. We're looking far further out. We've also got to consider the economic situation we're living in at the moment. Waka Kotahi, as we call them, or Transit New Zealanders have changed their name to, are running with a lot less funding. So they won't have the funds possibly to be able to look at it. We need to present a business case. This is going to take time. But in doing this, we need to involve the community, the whole community. So I really think that from my side of the forum, I feel that we need to bring everybody along, bring them with us, and explain the restrictions that we face and the technical issues that we also face. And, having read the program, if we try to upgrade the lower bridge, for example, and double the size of that, there's 2 bridges involved with that. You've got the Kirapiro stream as well. And there's a lot of logistics with that. We've got a lot of problems and logistics to deal with. So I think we need to develop that. But thank you very much. And I'll stand down and support that change.
Okay, thank you, Lou. Now, I'd just like to clarify something, and then I think the Mayor would like to say something. And yeah, okay. Part of the staff recommendations were to crack on with preparing a business case to submit to Waka Kotahi, and with the hope that could be done by December and maybe get a funding decision early next year. So if we slow things down, as has been a pretty consistent sentiment expressed today, Brian, are you worried that that could affect, the consideration of, like I suppose that funding avenue that you're trying to explore? Like, are you comfortable with perhaps having to delay that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly, I think whatever the timing, funding is going to be a tricky conversation. I've no doubt, because the government will this month release their plan for funding of capital projects across the country. And at this stage, because this project's not ready to fund to a next level, it won't be a high priority for them. So that likely funding will be committed to other projects. But in saying that, taking the time to make sure we get it right is really important. The thing about any project like this, the longer it takes, the more it costs. That's just the facts of life. And the more community engagement we do, the more it will cost, but that's necessary. And so as a team, we'll need to go away and think about that, and also work with our communications team in terms of what does a really good engagement process look like. And we'd have to come back to a committee with these ideas and potential timeframes and get a decision from council around the time and the cost that you're prepared to spend to complete the project.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Now, Mayor Susan?
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Some really good discussion today on this point. I love the eat the frog thing, and the building analogy as the sister of a builder and a daughter of a builder as well. So look, it's hard to know where to begin when you're discussing something of this magnitude and district-wide impact and cost. And I really appreciate your observations there, Brian, in terms of the reality of NZT Awaka Kotahi funding. I think we can't lose sight of that. With that said, that shouldn't prevent us from planning, because at some point there is going to be the unequivocal need for it, and there will be the money to pay for it eventually, right? So, but I guess what I wanted to just say is that in this sort of, and I want to agree with Councillor Montgomery's observations about what he thought is needed in terms of governance and stakeholder group and public role. Totally agreed with all of that. And I think when we undertake, because I assume we're going to bring this to a workshop at some point to interrogate it further, I really like to look at finding out and unpacking the notion around the cost to find a location for a bridge and designate now versus and just before you bring your spades in, because we've constantly been told that actually it's the latter is the cheaper process. And I want to unpack that. I want to be sure that that is actually holds true in today's term. Landscape's changing all the time, right? So I think we need to have some real clear direction and understanding the expert advice around that. I also want to get a better, it's a bit of how long is a piece of string, but I also want to have in our conversations a better understanding of potential costs for construction. I realise it will vary quite significantly, but we've sort of done a fair few wet finger in the wind sort of exercises that I think if we're going to be serious about this project, we need more than just wet fingers in the wind. And I think there's really important piece here, and I've said this a couple of times lately, is that we have to accept, as do I think every district and city council around the country, any decision maker, that we don't have a monopoly on all the good ideas. There are a lot of really good ideas out in our community, lots of really smart people who've lived here long enough or have expertise or skills that we can draw on. But what we have as council is, whilst we might not have a monopoly on ideas, we have restrictions. We have restrictions in terms of process. We have restrictions in terms of financial capacity. And we have restrictions in terms of legislation. We're so legislatively bound. So as much as I'm really excited to engage with the community, we have to be honest about what our restrictions are. So look, I just sort of want to put those ideas out there, and I think the discussions around lines of reporting that's kind of, for me, comes a little bit later in the piece. I think it's important that we get the actual process right in terms of how it's panned out. I mean, you could make it the strategic planning and policy, the reporting committee, or you could make it the service delivery, or retain it here with a greater sort of strategic lens. That's not really a big issue for me right now. I think the important bit is getting the earlier pieces right. So, and acknowledging, I guess, some of those chunks I've kind of highlighted there. But look, I'm really pleased that there's a willingness around the table to park the past and move on and do better, and question how we can do that and be honest in the ways that we can do that. And I think it would be naive to assume that we can hold the line that we shouldn't be talking about a location for the bridge, just saying, because that is, despite everybody saying this piece is big, it is broad, but there's a big piece there in respect of that bridge. So look, I'll just leave it there. So thank you for letting me.
Okay, look, thank you. Bruce, have you got,
Briefly.
and that'll be the last
Brian-
comment. And then Deputy Chair.
Brian, I'm
Peter.
in Mayor Susan's camp in that it did concern me future growth patterns of Cambridge could put limitations on where that bridge could go. So that's something I dare say you're looking. The other one is picking up on what Liz said in the recommendation, 170,000. How does that jeopardise any roading issues you've got? It's coming from roading reserves. Is that just parked for you to use for this? Or I'm not going to say you're not going to fix potholes or anything like that, but comment on this before you.
Yeah, so I would need an accountant to describe for me what roading reserves are, where they come from, and how they should be used, I think. But so certainly it's likely to cost more than that if we draw out the process and look at more issues, and as been described around the table this morning. So we probably need a greater budget than that. And we were going to roading reserves because obviously in the annual plan, no funding had been put aside for this. So we need to find another source of funding. But use of reserves, as is described in this report, it does have an impact on council's finances, because it is used for internal borrowing. So if you use those reserves, you need external borrowing. So there is a flow-on impact. So yeah, those reserves, as I understand it, whether they've come in from financial impact fees or from under expenditure on defined projects in previous years. But yeah, we can certainly have the finance team explain that at a future meeting. Yeah.
Okay, look, I just want to thank everyone, for all of the conversations, the points have been raised today. And I'm getting a feeling that there is a desire, to slow things up and take more considered approach. So with that, I've been advised that someone that hasn't spoken already should just make that recommendation. So I'm going to hand over to Councillor Pettit.
Thank you through the chair. Right, this is open to change. Right, so yeah, through procedural nuances, I just learnt. But basically looking at the recommendations, I would suggest that we accept recommendation A and we do receive the report. That we create a new B, and that is that the recommendation and next steps for Cambridge Connections business case lay on the table for a future workshop, then service delivery meeting. Now, the reason I've gone service delivery, at that meeting, we can make a decision to shift it or otherwise. And that C to E be removed. But yes, open to.
My understanding is, sorry. So I have no difficulty with the recommendations. If you're going to move it, I will second it. But yeah, that's fine. I'll just leave that there for now.
Well, I was going to suggest that we just refer this to Diana, our legal advisor. She is in the room.
Yeah.
Whether or not she's can give us her advice as whether or not that wording is going to get us where we want to be or?
Sharing.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. We're going to share the screen. Thank you, Diana.
Through the chair, I've just included wording there that reflects what's in the standing orders for matters to lie on the table. And so further details such as when it's worked back, brought back, they can be arranged at a later time.
Oh, okay. So
Including
yeah, we
workshops.
don't have to be so specific. It's all, yeah. So that's cool. Okay. So, Mike, are you happy then to move that recommendation?
Yeah, that's what you read. That's fine.
Yep. So accept recommendation A and just bring it back to service delivery.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's what the wording is that up there, which is that lie on the table.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And not be further discussed at this meeting. That's all we need to, yeah, that's all we need.
All we need to do.
Yeah.
Happy with that.
Yes, Mike?
Can I just query that?
Yeah.
What does it actually mean to lay on the table?
Oh,
Because, I mean, let's be honest, this is almost an outright rejection of the way forward. So what's the difference between laying it on the table and saying, no, we don't accept the way forward?
Well, I'll invite Diana if she could give us some help at understanding that.
Through the chair, so that would be the option where you let the matter lie on the table, and if it's not brought back, then it'll expire at the end of the triennium. So in a way, it's left there, and no further action is taken with respect to that. I mean, another option is that you could choose to make a decision to direct staff to do further work on the matter and then bring it back in due course. That could be the alternative.
Which I think is a better path. So, yeah.
Okay. And Roger, were you going to speak on a similar item?
No, I was quite happy with it laying on the table,
Mm.
but recognised that when it was brought back, it would be brought back into the environment of this committee.
Oh, right.
And then any intermediate workshop would have then informed the decision of this committee as to what then happened.
Okay, all right. So Diana, I just want to know whether or not we have to be concerned about that process that is anticipated, or whether it doesn't need to be expressed in the recommendation.
Through the chair, I'd suggest it could just be left neutral and then it can be brought back once a way forward has been finalised.
Okay, so I thought we got some support for direct staff to do more work and to bring it back to a future meeting. Yeah. Well, I mean, we had someone say that they wanted a bit more beef to that, and I understand Dinah said that would be acceptable.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, but anyway, I'm trying to get Mike here to
So-
move that because he hasn't spoken, and yeah.
So we're just going to.
So it
So
would
we've got
be,
it up, yeah.
it would be,
Yeah, it's coming up on the screen now.
yep, accept A.
Yeah.
And then what does that read? Yep. Direct staff to undertake further work on this matter and report back to the committee in due course.
Okay, all right. So we've got Mike moving that, got the mayor seconding it. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. That's great. And look, before we close off this item, just want to acknowledge the team, Brian, that you've had there. Rachel and Nathan and anyone else that's been behind the scenes that, you know, accepting that we wanted to work through that feedback and work up the recommendations and bring this report. As you've said, it's taken a phenomenal amount of work, and really appreciate the commitment that you're showing, that you want to make sure that what we do, going forward is the right thing. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's been invaluable for the team to be here and hear this discussion, because you cannot beat, having the team hear it firsthand to then go forward and understand the requirements for the future. So thank you. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So we've all in a break, I think. So we're going to have a break for morning tea. And we'll be back just before 11. Thank you. So we're just starting the live streaming again. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your break. And now we're going to move on with our agenda. And the next item is contract signed under delegated authority. And I'll ask Dawn to speak to this.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just those 4 contracts that have been awarded under staff delegations since the committee last met, and welcome any questions.
Okay, no questions. Do I have someone that's not willing to move the recommendation? Thank you, Monty, and a seconder, Lou. Thank you. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carry. There's noise in the background. Yeah. And now, we have the transportation activity report. Welcoming back Brian. Gosh, you're working hard today, aren't you, Brian? Yeah. Luckily, you paid the big bucks. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, over to you, Brian.
Very nice frog, had at morning tea. Thank you, Madam Chair. My report there in front of you, I'll take it as read. At this time of year, having completed a financial year, I include both things that are happening for the next year, but also a bit of a recap on what we achieved in the prior year. So in the first item there, rehabs. There's certainly some talk about the community, the state of Shakespeare Street, the lower part down towards the bridge. It's quite rough, cracked, broken. So we're busy with investigations on that at the moment. We'll be digging some more holes to look at the underlying sort of surface, but we are coming up with a design with the idea of reconstructing that this summer to fix that problem. We've completed Whitmore Street rehab at the Lion Street end as part of the Cycleway project, and we've got a couple of peat swamp sections there that are deformed. But last year we did 4.5 kilometres of pavement renewal at just under $2 million. Then for resurfacing, last year we did 61 kilometres of resurfacing at $3.7 million. Because of the restrained renewal budget for the year ahead, we're certainly focusing on those highest risk roads, highest traffic roads. And so there will be some local roads with low volumes of traffic where we're holding those seals or pavements with maintenance treatments. The pathways projects and the construction projects there, we're certainly making great progress with those even through the winter time. We've made good progress. The Victoria Road roundabout is sort of fully open to traffic now, and they're working on the approaches and the landscaping, lighting and things. And in Hall Street in Cambridge, we've done all the drainage works and intersection works. Under our maintenance contracts, you'll see there's a graph there of pothole patching. And certainly you can see in the last 12 months, we've patched a lot more potholes. That's as a result of weather, but also probably a bit of a catch up where we've gone through and even, looking to patch the smallest potholes before they get larger. And so there's a lot of activity in that area. The government policy statement, certainly the new minister is keen for more reporting on the likes of pavement maintenance, pothole patching, traffic management there. So I just mentioned we're expecting to have new requirements for reporting on those elements in the future, which we're in good stead to do because we already do a number of traffic management audits every month, and we're already sort of hotly looking for redundant traffic management that shouldn't be there, or looking to reduce the traffic management if we can, so there's less cones and signs on our network. So the team have the bit between their teeth on that already, so we'll have no trouble reporting when those requirements come through.
Just on that, I think Councillor Peter would like to say something.
Hey, sorry, through the chair. An attachment to that really. A few months ago, we asked for a workshop on not speed humps, but traffic calming measures and whether there's methodologies, policies, etc. Just wondering where that sits, because August was talked about. Yeah.
Yes, no, apologies for that. We've certainly started preparing that workshop and gathering information for it. So I think at the moment we're expecting September or October for that. I was just
Thank you.
Yep.
No, good. Just to know it's still on our radar. Thank you.
Just I'd highlight under footpath works, because of the change in government priorities, they have reduced the funding for this activity. That does have an impact on council's revenue. We had a total budget of $2 million for footpath and cycle path maintenance and renewal. NZTA have funded quite a reduction in that. So a reduction of $500,000 in revenue or funding for that over 3 years. So a loss of about $175,000 per year for that activity, which hurts, because with our growing population and we see, you know, our public sentiment around maintaining footpaths and everything, people want better footpaths. So it is quite painful to lose that subsidy, but we will reprioritise and do the best that we can within that reduced budget. There's just a couple of photos there under the urban mobility heading, but certainly in Kiki, that Whitmore Street is looking really good now, with a lot of, more paving complete, the traffic signals at the school working, the bus stops and everything in place. And the project finished off in Walton Street there at the end of June. Looks really great too. We've got a much safer toilet block without traffic passing in front of the door. That if you stepped out and somebody was coming by in a car very close, they could almost run you over as you stepped out of the toilet. So there's a much improved parking layout and accessible intersections there as a result of that work.
Brian, I've just got a question from Andrew.
Yeah, not so much a question, but I drove Whitmore Street, I think last Thursday. I thought it was looking absolutely fantastic. And I really hope, I know there's some dissenting voices in that community. I hope they give it a chance to bed in and for people to use it as it's designed to be used, because I personally think it's going to be a great asset, really. So congratulations on that from me, and also Walton Street. That's a great little improvement for Te Awamutu. So well done to your team.
Great, thank you, Andrew. I'll certainly pass that on to the team. Yeah, no, certainly with the cycleway project. So there is quite a program of monitoring and gathering feedback on the outcomes of that, including connecting with our community and hearing what they feel about that. So we will, as it all finishes off, we will bring back some good data and feedback, both
Liz,
to the community and the
council. Liz, and then Roger.
Yeah, look, just on the cycleways, I've certainly had a lot of feedback over the last few weeks on you know, the progress today as well. I often remind people that we aren't building these cycleways necessarily for today, for this point in time. This is for my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. We are just simply planning, you know, for the long-term future. And I think that's just really important not to lose sight of. And I hear the frustrations coming out of Kiki in particular. I went for a drive around there, and I've already acknowledged, I think, to the staff that it is a work in progress. And once the cones disappear and once the familiarity of how to use that area, I think it will really serve that community well.
Roger?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I notice all your, particularly in terms of the safety review of the work that's been done, and that incorporates the Shakespeare Street roundabout. But there's a couple of comments there. Circulating speeds in the roundabout have reduced, and slower vehicle speeds at the northern pedestrian crossing. I'd be really interesting to see the data on which those comments are based. So if you could share that with us, that would be really good. Or is it that they are just anecdotal comments?
Yeah, I can confirm that. So this safety review team looked at the site before anything was built. So they had the design plans of what was proposed. They looked at the site and gave advice to council. And then the same team returned to the site after the works. So I don't believe that they took a radar gun and measured speeds. I think it's from their on the site observations is their opinions.
Anecdotal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess these are people with a great deal of experience and
I
practice.
just
at
have a
this.
bit of a problem with us making statements that are categoric like that when they aren't backed by any specific data. Because it's quite easy to, anyway, thank you.
Very good. Yeah, so that does move to that next item, which is the Cambridge Works, and particularly around the Cook Street, Shakespeare Street interim walking and cycling improvements. And I think some of the community consternation with this project has been a misunderstanding. So certainly we heard from the community who came both to the community board and via petition and said, look, it's really important that Leamington has a safe and better route to the Victoria Street Bridge and then on up to schools and everything. And we acknowledge that the crossing Shakespeare Street was very difficult and potentially hazardous, and that longer term there would be probably a different intersection there or more money spent with a bigger solution in time when we understood what that was. And that would come out of the Cambridge Connections sort of program business case in terms of guiding what sort of volume of traffic and pedestrians and everything we'd need to cater for in the future. And we also knew that the urban mobility business case would look at pathways into Leamington and connecting it with the CBD area, and it might identify that potentially a different route for pedestrians and cyclists was needed, maybe Burn Street or Wordsworth Street or other options. So we didn't want to go and spend, you know, a couple of $1 million, which of course we didn't have for a really large project. We needed to spend around that sort of $250,000 to $300,000 and make an interim improvement that would serve the community well for the next sort of 3 to 5 years. And so that was our starting point, and we did make that known. But I guess the community as a whole, when they saw some things, rubber speed bumps on the road, they saw that this looks too temporary, we don't like it, and they didn't understand that background to it. But the work that we have done, I think, is producing the right results.
Thank you, Brian. Now I've got Liz and then Philip would like to speak.
Yeah, we've had a lot of feedback on this roundabout. Thank you, Brian. Look, it's probably fair to say that the Shakespeare roundabout has higher than average traffic from large trucks, right, which is where a lot of concern has come from. And I think it's our trucking industry that have certainly been the most vocal with me, that have reached out and said, hey, we're not comfortable here. And got to, and I have met with them, in fact, with Eric, as Eric was with us as well. Also involved me getting a leg up into a truck, I add, what you do for the job sometimes. But, it was good to see. It was good for me to see the visibility of what the truck drivers can see as they're coming up to the roundabout and heading left, because this is mostly traffic, coming from Te Awamutu to Taranaki, or coming from Te Awamutu and heading to the port, I think. Lots of things going on there. So the other thing Joe and I noticed actually when we popped around there was the sun was also another, as it was rising, was actually quite difficult for a lot of those drivers to see as they're turning left. And I'm probably most concerned, and I think the truck drivers are most concerned about their ability to see the pedestrians on that priority crossing. So that's where nearly all of the feedback that I've had points to. And so that industry, I know, have concerns about council's consultation around that roundabout, and perhaps they would just like a greater voice in the future when designing roundabouts in that kind of space, especially when it's so urban. The other thing I wanted to make mention of is that with a lot of the with the review that I saw, and appreciate that was done, I think was a good thing to do, but there's so many intangible aspects of safety, from our community's perspective, that I just kind of wanted to make mention, and that is, the perceived attentiveness of drivers, our ability as a community to feel like, that priority crossing is going to be an easy one to navigate. I'm looking at our vulnerable, our people with disabilities, our super aged. How confident will they be to utilise that, that priority crossing? So it's the intangible side of things that I'm kind of really mindful of. And I also know that driver confidence and comfort, and perceptions around that is something that we need to be really mindful of. One good thing that I know that the industry, the heavy haulage industry, have said to me is that particular roundabout is now in their daily toolbox meetings. Okay, so that means that they are aware that there is kind of a perceived issue, or depending on what time of the day it is, that navigating that roundabout, it is an issue for them. So I just wanted to make those points. Yeah, thank you, Brian.
Thank you. And now Philip.
Yep, thank you. Thank you. You just mentioned, it's an interim improvement, and it is, an interim improvement and things like that. Liz just talked about the elderly and young members of the community. Those raised crossings are a real grey area with drivers and pedestrians. Are they a right of way? Do you have to give way or what have you? So they are a bit of a grey one. Was it ever suggested, and how much would it cost? But was it ever suggested that you put in a traffic light crossing halfway down before Upper Kingsley, or before you start heading down to the low level bridge there? So what would the costing be on that, and was that ever talked about, or what have you? But it's certainly an improvement for the short term anyway. But yeah, we want to be able to. You mentioned about getting people across the street to school and the CBD and things like that. So the traffic's not going to get any less until a bridge is built or whatever, perhaps. But yeah.
Yeah, no, good questions. So my staff were very mindful of the fact that given we had a limited budget to spend, we couldn't afford a set of traffic signals, which in that sort of location, we would have been spending sort of $1.5 million probably. And there's always the risk. We're catering for people who are both coming through the pathway from Sheridan Crescent and up from Kingsley Street, but also quite a flow of traffic that pedestrians who are coming down the hill from Wordsworth Street and crossing. And so the further we move it away from the convenient place, the more likely people are to just duck across the road with no crossing. If pedestrians, able-bodied pedestrians will often take the shortest route if they perceive that it's relatively low risk, but that's when they're often and most in harm's way. So we were quite conscious of those issues, and that's why we looked at a range of options. Should it be a zebra crossing with pedestrians having right of way? And we felt being near the roundabout, there was a danger that pedestrians or cyclists would just walk out onto the crossing and not realise that an approaching car hadn't seen them. So we felt it important that we retained priority for the traffic, and that pedestrians and cyclists had to give way to traffic. And there are signs there sort of announcing that. And our observations and the safety team's observations who reviewed it is that the crossing is working quite safely. People are obviously stopping and looking for traffic, but also because the crossing is now more visible to motorists, that a lot of motorists are actually stopping and waving the pedestrian or cyclist across, which is really good. That's the ideal outcome where, yes, the traffic has priority, but drivers are stopping for vulnerable road users like children on bicycles and things, and making sure they get across safely. And certainly, the heavy traffic industry, we had conversations, albeit after the fact, but we had a number of conversations with them and other driver organisations. And yes, we recognise that for many trucks, any left turn where there's a pedestrian crossing, or even just a pram crossing, that is a danger point. And I know that our road safety coordinator, I think, did a session with our Halpo school about, trucks at intersections and crossing the road and things like that, realising that truck drivers can't see. But one other trucking industry rep said, well, actually on the approach to the roundabout, on the straight approach, you've got a really good view of pedestrians who are on the path heading towards the crossing or coming towards you. And also at the limit line as a truck driver, you've also got a really good view of the crossing. It's only once they start turning in that direction, if a pedestrian or cyclist made a mistake and just tore across in front, then the driver wouldn't be able to see them. But for many situations, the drivers would have some pre-warning because drivers are scanning the environment for risks as they approach intersections. If they see pedestrians or cyclists on the path heading in that direction, they're already conscious of them before they get to make their turn. So there are some, I guess, human factors and things that we do need to rely on as well.
That raises a question for me, Brian, about when you're in your design phase, is it a standard practice to sort of get input from the heavy traffic industry or anything when you're, in the early stages of a project? Do you do that as a matter of course?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the scale of the project, but often they are engaged with, yes. So in this case, there wasn't, unfortunately, and it's probably the speed of the project development and everything that that step was missed. But we're certainly much more conscious, and we're making a much better effort to make sure we get it.
Thank you. I've got Roger and then Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Brian. My understanding is that the streets leading up to that Cambridge Street roundabout, they're both main arterial routes, both main arterial roads.
Correct.
Did you have any discussion with emergency services about, again, the installation of speed humps on main arterials? Because my understanding is that there's quite a strong negative reaction by the emergency services to the large number of speed humps that are appearing around Cambridge, particularly on arterial roads, which are their main access route in the case of emergency.
Yeah, no, certainly. So certainly prior to this project, my team have had at least one, if not more, meetings with the emergency services and the group of them. So all grouped together at the same meeting, fire, police and ambulance, and certainly heard from them about their requirements, what they like and don't like, around any sort of intersection improvement or speed table. So these ones are certainly designed to be very easy and to travel over. And if you stand and observe there, you'll see that the trucks and everything else are going over them very smoothly and easily. And it is at a location where traffic is already travelling slow because of the being right beside the roundabout. So it's certainly not going to add any difficulty for emergency services in this location.
Just bringing your point up there, you said prior to this project. So in regards to this project, you didn't do any consultation?
I don't know that. I'd have to check in with the team to respond. Yeah.
Thank you. And now Mike.
Thanks through the chair. Back to that Shakespeare roundabout. And I'm looking at sort of pages around between 819 and 829. There's some good photos there. And maybe I should have noted a conflict of interest because I think that might be my wife in one of the photos actually. But anyway, it looks like she's doing the right thing. So just three quick points for me is just having stood out there, and Philip and I went there a few weeks ago and just probably spent about 45 minutes or so, and having driven it. So a little bit from observation, a little bit from personal experience. One is that safe crossing point. Hey, great concept. And I guess if I go back to the beginning, there was limited money to engage with this particular project to try and get some safety improvements. So I think that needs to be acknowledged. And also, some of this is clearly in draft form, like the little fingers sticking out, so that there's sort of not a permanent solution. So I want to acknowledge that too. But with that safe passageway, driving along Cook Street, car in front of me, and wanting to go down Shakespeare Street, and the car in front of me shot off. And so what you tend to do is, because it's not a stop sign, it's a give way, is you tend to, just to be safe, you sort of look up Shakespeare Street just to make sure, knowing the car in front of you is gone. But the car in front of me had stopped because someone went across the safe refuge. And so you sort of go from looking up Shakespeare Street, and all of a sudden, there's only 2-car distance between that refuge and really the corner. It's just not a lot. Hey, I didn't have a nose to tail, but I could see how, all right, an improvement here could possibly be made. I totally pick up on your point, Brian, that if you shift this too far down, people will not use it. And I see that around schools and things also. It has to actually make sense. But looking forward as we review this project, maybe considering another car length or two down further might be worth investigating. But I guess the data will show us whether we do have any issues there. The next one, which was pretty evident in terms of, I do believe there is an issue, and it's on page 821. There's some good photos there of the tracking from Cook Street around where the super liquor is, heading down Shakespeare. And the tracking tells you that we do have an issue there. Now, there's talk that a professional driver would go wide enough not to do that, but unfortunately, our really job is to keep everyone as safe as possible. So that's something that's quite evident to the public, and you don't have to be an engineer to realise that there's some pretty serious trailer units or truck units that have come off the road and very close to a footpath. So that's something I don't feel comfortable with. And under, if there's my workplace, I'd go health and safety. We need to address that, but I'm just going to lay that on the table. The next one is the whole rationale, I thought, of the speed fingers, whatever the proper name is, around that Shakespeare Cook Street roundabout was to slow traffic down. Now, coming down Shakespeare Street is where most of the culprits are, and without doubt, having done it yourself and looking at it, it definitely slows traffic down. There's no two ways about that. I think it's doing an absolutely superb job. But on the far side, coming from the low-level bridge up Shakespeare Street, either going straight through or turning right into Cook, I can't see the rationale of, maybe why the fingers are there, but why they can't be from, say, 12 o'clock up Shakespeare Street to the top of Shakespeare and 6 o'clock at the bottom of Shakespeare, why they can't be bored in and gradually bored out. So, not taken right out, but it would just get rid of, because we observed several truck and trailer units, and they were doing the old smack, 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 smack. And that's just individual drivers. But driving that route reasonably often, you do see continual damage to those things. So just your thoughts on any of those three things, but particularly the last couple of points around the tracking and around, is it worth looking at getting rid of some of the length of those fingers between 6 and 12?
Yep, thank you. Yes, certainly staff are looking at those issues that have been raised on the safety report and are preparing a bit of a package of works to go back and address some of those issues. So certainly the Cook Street approach, looking at the line marking and how it guides. At the moment, some of the old line marking near the centre island is there, and a lack of an edge line on the inside. It leaves drivers perhaps too close to the curb, then at risk of their trailers banging over the curb. So we think we can make improvements there, and I'm certainly open to looking at removing or shortening some of the fingers where they're not needed. So, no, we've certainly been thinking and talking about just those issues as a team.
Thanks, Brian. Look, we've had some pretty good discussion on that Shakespeare Street roundabout, and I'm conscious of time. So if you could just, skip over the other main points so that we could, draw this item to a close. Thank you.
Very good, Madam Chair. I'm just scanning down through. There's there's quite an interesting piece there about recycling and waste bin audits or recycling bin audits. So, you know, there has been a gradual improvement there in audit results in terms of we went from 93% compliant bins up to 95%, and we shouldn't underestimate how valuable that is in reducing contamination. And there's obviously been some good media coverage about that as well. So service suspensions, you know, less than 0.5% of bins audited or properties requiring service suspension. I think that's a pretty good result, and it really does reflect, I think, a willingness in our community to do the right thing, the vast majority of people. So that's really pleasing. Yeah, I'll leave it at that and just take any other questions you have, but thank you.
Any other questions? And I'd just like to say it's fantastic to see that improvement, with the recycling compliance and that, and lack of, reducing contamination. So you happy? Yes, Lou, are you happy?
Just a comment, Brian. Very, very pleased to see that we're still supporting the motorcycle training with the Templetons. I was involved at the very early stages of that and actually put that in place. So as I say, they teach people the actual day-to-day riding skills, and they are very, very good and very, very professional. And I think, when you're on a motorbike, you are the one that's always going to come off worst. So it's a great skill and a great thing that we're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. I'll just make a point. That was one other area. If you look at the bottom of the community road safety, that was another area where we had a reduced budget from the government for that activity. So we are having to prune back, but we are looking to make sure we maintain those high value activities. Yep.
Thank you. So look, I'm happy to move the report if someone would like to second that. Thank you, Andrew. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you, Brian. Great work. And now our next item is the Community Services Activity Report. And I can see Brad making his way to the top of the table. And that's on page 857 of our agenda. Welcome, Brad. Good to see you here today, and we'll hand over to you to present your report.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi o te rā koutou, te hei Māori ora. I'll take the report as read, but as always, I'll pick up a few highlights along the way. Early May, we reopened the playground at Te Amuru Wamamoro Park. Thanks to those that came down to celebrate. It was a really good morning and many happy faces. This playground was a really good example of incorporating mana whenua input alongside the memorial intent and the purpose of the reserve. I feel we've got a really good balance there of the respective features, and the artwork has been a really good pickup as well, really popular addition. Unfortunately, we've seen continued vandalism at the Terry Kane Drive playground. We've now just recently installed temporary cameras on site and exploring the longer term options of this, which might be able to link into the ComSafe program as well. Recently, some individuals were captured not respecting the playground, and we're working with those people to give them some on-site work experience, such as graffiti removal. Following the discovery of Dutch elm disease in February, we've been looking at potential mitigations to protect our council trees. Currently, there's only one known vaccine available in New Zealand, which has been used with success by Auckland City Council to manage the spread of Dutch elm disease in their council-owned elms. We intend to administer this to our 241 council-owned trees and offer inoculation to the owners of the 5 protected trees in our district. 5 elm trees, that is. Staff and contractors will use this round of vaccination to determine which trees are worth continued inoculation. Some of them might be in decline or not worthy specimens to keep on in that program. So we'll make that assessment as we do this first round. The end of year library data identifies really interesting trends in how the libraries are being used in different ways. while visitor numbers are relatively even across the two libraries, in fact, a slight increase in the Te Amutu side, the card and issue numbers are significantly higher in the Cambridge Library, indicating patrons are coming in mostly to borrow items compared to Te Amutu, where people come in to make use of the chairs and tables for business, study and meeting socially. This highlights the importance of providing space for these different functions to be accommodated in our libraries. Other than that, I'm happy to take any part, any questions in regards to the report.
Thank you. Yes, Mike, and then Philip.
More just a comment, Brad, just around the public toilets and the playgrounds that have been damaged, over a significant amount of time now, really, and just the frustration I'm sure you and your team and the wider community sort of suffer. We had some of these, I'd say, same kids, do something, set fire to something at school a little while back too. And I really ask the public and the parents of these kids, we've got them on camera, and these are teenage kids, and they'll be all the same kids doing this at 3 a.m. in the morning of where the hell's the parenting? 7 kids on camera, unless they've jumped out your blinking window, it's up to the public and the parents of these kids to take some blinking ownership here, and actually know where your kids are on a Sunday morning at 3 a.m. Dressed in bloody little bloody crop tops or whatever the hell they're called. Really, people, it's frustrating for us, but it's your kids that are out there defacing our town and doing themselves no service at all. So just a general bloody frustration.
Thank you, Mike. Liz.
Here, Mike. I hear you on that one.
The boomer.
Interesting comment on fashion.
Yeah.
3 in the morning, give me a break. We're not in Hawaii.
And it's middle of winter. Hey, Brad, look, thanks for your report. I just wanted to focus a little bit on the library, actually. So the statistics for the library, I think, are great to have at this point in time. I just want to, I see Joe's here in the gallery still from the Cambridge Community Board, just continue to advocate for a larger, Cambridge community venue at some point. When I look at the users across the district, obviously they're still very, very high. But when I go into the Cambridge Library and see the books all stacked on the floor, I can see that there is a real need to look at something bigger and better in the future. And just a bit of a shout out. So 150 years of the Te Amutu Library is going to be celebrated this weekend. So I've been practicing my knuckle bones and I'll be there, on behalf of council. So looking forward to that. Yeah, thanks.
Yes. I've got Philip and then Lou.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Brad. A couple of things which aren't in your report. I've just been to a couple of community meetings in the last week or so, and there was comments that there's been vandalism again in cemeteries and around Hautapu. I hadn't heard anything, but is there anything that we should be aware of or of? Or?
No, I'm not aware of anything, sorry.
Yeah, okay. It's more in recent times, not historically. And the other thing, which I do believe happened over the weekend, the police have told me, is there was boy races that came through Cambridge. They started up in Hamilton. There was about 600 cars on Saturday night. It was a pretty wet night, I think, Saturday night, wasn't it? And there's 3 or 4 people per car, and they came through and the power was out, particularly on Cambridge North and things like that. Around our bylaws, I mean, we've put in new bylaws in recent years. Did you know about the boy races coming through town? Have you heard any disruptions from that, or police been in touch with you?
Not in relation to any of my reserves or our spaces. No, I've only seen what's been in the media over the weekend as well.
And just on that point, I'm not sure if it's relevant for Brad's report.
Well,
That's
just
all
the
about-
bylaws and,
Yeah, but we might be able to follow up
Okay.
outside the meeting.
Right,
Okay,
okay,
thank you.
okay.
Now, did anyone else? I think it's Lou. Thank you. Oh, and we Bruce, yep.
Okay,
Oh.
thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, Brad, quickly on the Memorial Park, the utilisation down there is quite a lot improved since you've actually placed that playground there. Really, really appreciate it. Quickly, I attended the meeting for the museum board the trust for the museum board with Dean. And the one concern they raised is if we're moving our collection back from its current location, will the insurance for that be adequate to cover the transition of the collection from down and up to the new area of Road Street here? So is it going to have enough? That was the one question they asked me to bring up.
Yeah, kia ora, thanks, Councillor Brown. Most of our collection didn't make the trip down to Rickett Road. So very, very little. As you'll be aware, we've sort of transformed that space into an educational space and brought elements that don't require the climatic control of a museum. There's no concerns there in terms of relocating. It's mostly very minor things that are very easy to manoeuvre and transport.
And now Bruce?
Thanks, Brad. My concerns are our new assets, playgrounds and public toilets of cameras. Couldn't they be mandatory to look after them? Are you thinking like you are putting them in at Terry Game now, but all these new ones, it just seems to happen all the time?
I think it is a case-by-case basis. Terry Game has by far and beyond been our most area of concern. I think there's still some housing to go in and around. I think it's the north side of that, probably maybe the west. So I think once more we get more passive surveillance, that should help slow that down as well. A lot of our playgrounds are already in well-populated areas, and we've got that nice passive surveillance, good crime prevention through design principles as well. For whatever reason, this particular site has been getting particular attention. It's case by case. There is a significant cost to put cameras in and then maintain those. So that's why we don't just manage, put them in as a due course.
Thanks. And then Hinerangi, and I'd just like that to be our last question because I'm conscious of time and sticking to our agenda. Thank you.
Kia ora. I've just been asked to raise it publicly for an update on the Kihikihi Skate Park development and if there is any.
So we're still in the site optioneering phase of that project. It does have an dependency on another project there related in Kiki. And so we're just currently working on an agreement with mana whenua there around the site, or potential site. And I don't have an immediate update top of hand. Don't think Ken's in the room at the moment, is he? But whether he's going to update, I'm not sure. But it's still on our cards. It's part of our action plan for this year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, I'm hoping, Brad, that you're happy for us to wrap this up. Thank you. And so now I have a resolution to receive the report. Thank you, Philip and Lou seconding. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Appreciate that, Brad. Yeah. And now we have a resolution to exclude the public. I have a mover and Roger's going to move and a seconder, please.